Anybody involved in politics understands the influence of the United Nations. The main perception of the United Nations is contingent on bringing world peace. Many believe it's to bring massive change to our current economics and its status of authority. I'm here to tell you that it's really none of those things, because the United Nations really has no authority to begin with, meaning the institution has no authority to change laws or determine our future in economics. We don't know how they're going to bring in their peacemaking agendas, and that's what it's truly about. Agendas. You never know. They could very well be an influence on governments who end up bringing in fear-mongering with government-funded media. In order to understand the depth of the United Nations, we first need to address the difference between a think tank and a governmental organization. Starting with a think tank, its intention is to group many experts together to bring solutions to problems in an economic or political setting. The purpose is to take many different ideas, group them together, and make one big mastermind. Think tanks are independent research organizations that make suggestions or recommendations to governments and other lawmakers. This is completely different from the objective of the United Nations. The United Nations is an intergovernmental organization, meaning its purpose is to bring peace and international security. This serves as a forum for members to collectively discuss global challenges. Now I know what you're thinking. Think tanks and intergovernmental organizations are both think tanks. In order to further understand this, we need to go deeper into the United Nations. Think tanks and intergovernmental organizations both have very similar characteristics. So what's the difference? The one and only difference between a think tank and an intergovernmental organization is that the United Nations conducts between one or more governments, as think tanks do not. However, the power of an intergovernmental organization highly outweighs the power of think tanks, since they have influence on many governments. See, the United Nations isn't just the United Nations. They have access to many different agencies, just like think tanks, but they have influence on more than just one government. For example, the United Nations has access to the United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization, World Health Organization, Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, International Labor Organization, United Nations Environment Program, and 9 other specialized agencies that lie within the United Nations. With this in mind, we can see that the United Nations can easily be mistaken as a think tank. But in actuality, they are way more powerful because they're multi-agency accesses to recommend policies to many governments. However, their only goal is international cooperation and world peace. A think tank's goal is to solve political or economic problems. I know what you're wondering. Who exactly attends these United Nations meetings? Well, let me tell you. International government organizations such as the European Union, journalists and media organizations, academic researchers, society groups, economic and social councils, and other non-government organizations, United Nations secretaries and agencies, and an additional 193 member states of the United Nations. Antonio Guterres is currently the CEO of the United Nations. He was re-elected in June 2021. Franklin Roosevelt was the founder of the United Nations in 1945. Now that we know the overall structure and understanding of the United Nations, now we can get into the good stuff. As I've stated earlier, many believe the United Nations to be some high authority organization that rules the world. However, this is certainly not the case. The United Nations goal is to promote peace among international organizations. However, in doing so, they want to suggest bringing in massive change to the public. Agenda 2030. For all of those pointing fingers and claiming conspiracy theorists out there, the promotion of the 2030 agenda is no joke. Let's read up on what the United Nations has to say about the 2030 agenda. The United Nations promises to secure a future of prosperity and peace for the people and the planet, leaving no one behind. With only 7 years left to go for 2030, the world needs all hands on deck. What's more interesting is what the webpage says at the bottom. The Act Now campaign offers simple actions that everyone can take to accelerate progress on the goals and create better lives on a healthier planet. When we go to this webpage, you can see an app that you can download called Act Now, and it makes suggestions that you can take for a more clean world. To better understand the reasoning for this, we can see what Ella Gross has to say about it.
Hi everyone, 안녕하세요. My name is Ella Gross. Today, I'd like to invite you to join me and support #ActNow, a United Nations campaign for climate action and sustainability. Living more sustainably doesn't have to be a huge effort, and now is a great time to start. How do I do it? I'm using this super cool app to help me build sustainable habits and make more conscious choices in my daily life. For example, turning off the water while I'm brushing my teeth, unplugging electronic devices when I'm not using them, and using reusable water bottles. Like me, you can also start your sustainable journey today. Visit un.org/actnow to find out more. While the world is going through some tough times, you and I, as individuals, can do our part to make things better. So, act now!
We can clearly see that the United Nations is making bold moves towards climate change for the 2030 agenda. However, this is just one portion of the 2030 agenda.
7 years ago, 193 world leaders committed to a better future for people and planet through greener solutions and more equal societies. Today, at the halfway point of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the world is not on track to fulfill that promise. We face immense challenges. Climate change, pollution and biodiversity loss threaten lives and livelihoods, topped by crises and governance challenges in too many regions. But failing is not an option. There's just too much at stake. World leaders must live up to their commitments. Everyone, everywhere can play their part. I've witnessed how strengthened UN country teams under revamped resident coordinator leadership are making a difference on the ground. They are making the most of the UN's offer to boost action by local and national governments, convene stakeholders, and invest in transformative solutions for sustainable development. So there is hope. We are only heading to the second half now. We will need to focus on key transitions that address climate change, biodiversity and pollution, energy access and affordability, food systems, jobs and social protection, education and digital connectivity. And the world needs to massively scale up long-term development finance. In this second half, it's all hands on deck, so we can win this for people and for planet.
The United Nations Sustainable Development has 17 goals for the 2030 Agenda. No poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, decent work and economic growth, industry, innovation and infrastructure, reduced inequalities, sustainable cities and communities, responsible consumption and production, climate action, life below water, life on land, peace, justice, and strong institutions, partnerships for the goals. The climate crisis is just a small portion of the United Nations goals. However, it's being promoted the most amongst the media in the World Economic Forum. Klaus Schwab.
Yes, I see a tremendous effort in terms of rallying now behind net zero. Not only governments, but business. We have a number of initiatives at the World Economic Forum. For example, we work sector by sector how to decarbonize those industries. So there is an awareness now it's generally accepted that climate change, if we do not tackle with it, could be the next big, let's say, virus. With much more damaging and long-term consequences compared to COVID-19.
We can assume these changes will bring massive effects on governmental and economic structures in order to accomplish these goals. It's up to you on whether or not you support these ideas from the United Nations or not. Personally, there's massive questions to be asked about all of this, such as, who's going to fund it? How will these goals be accomplished? Are we going to be duped with more fear-mongering in order to achieve these goals through media propaganda? Does a world government need to be established in order to get these goals done? Will we all be microchipped by a radio frequency identification microchip and be unified economically internationally? Will these goals be accomplished through ethical decision-making and funding? The main issue is we don't know how they're going to get these goals completed by 2030. Personally, I'd brace myself for any sort of outcome. They might use third-party institutions such as the media for fear-mongering, and we don't know how governments will respond to this. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it or found any value from it, I would like to invite you into my Discord server, which the link can be found up above or down below in the description. I also have hats, hoodies, t-shirts, and other merchandise, which every order is reinvested into creating content just like this one. If you'd like to learn more, click shop now.